So the wildcard DLC for Star Wars Outlaws has been out for just under a week now. I didn't actually get a chance to play it right away as I was at a wedding over the weekend, but I did finally get around to playing it. And so today I wanted to give my honest thoughts on the first DLC drop for Star Wars Outlaws. There won't be too much more content on the channel for this DLC itself just because it was a little bit shorter, but if you guys are interested in seeing content for the second upcoming DLC, A Pirate's Fortune, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I will be covering that once it is on the way, so make sure you don't miss out. Now, getting straight into it, I'm gonna try and keep this as spoiler free as I possibly can. I'm not gonna ruin any of the key story points. We already knew that there was Sabak and stuff like that, so we'll touch on that, but I won't touch on the rest of it too much just so you guys can experience it for yourself. Now, at the very beginning of the DLC, I will say that the stakes are set very, very high. It's kind of just like almost a bit of a shock as to how serious this DLC is right away. Again, I won't go into too much detail, but we do finally get to meet Governor Thornton, who is mentioned quite a bit in the actual base game. Not only through the actual story, through Bosnok and stuff, but we also just see a lot of like data pads and stuff mentioning his name. And he seemed very important, yet we never actually met him. So it was really cool to finally meet him. And yeah, again, won't say too much else, but the stakes that he sets for us as Kay Vess was pretty insane right off the bat. It essentially gave Kay absolutely no choice but to work with the Empire. Now, after all that sort of stuff, we make it off of Renpali Station. We get to the ship where most of this DLC takes place, that being the Marenia. And this was a really cool ship. It was actually really fun to explore this. And this is where a big chunk of the game actually took place. So you can tell they put a hell of a lot of detail into this ship. Now, the majority of this section while we're on that ship, it's kind of like a whodunit situation, almost like a murder mystery type of game. And it was really, really fun. You've got all these little elements that you kind of need to figure out on your own. The game doesn't really hold your hand. It'll give you a rough idea of what you need to do, but it really is down to just actually going around and exploring. You need to listen to a bunch of conversations. You need to actually listen to the clues that you get and then go and make the most of those. So if you miss a bit of information, I can imagine that this is actually probably pretty hard to do. Now, I can see a lot of people probably wouldn't love this section because it's, it's not full of action and stuff like that. It is pretty tedious at the end of the day, but I actually really enjoyed this section. It had me really intrigued in the story, and I guess just as a kind of like competitive person, I was really invested in trying to, solve this puzzle. And so yeah, this part of the game I actually really enjoyed, which was obviously leading up to kind of the main section of the game, or the main focus anyway, that being the big Sabak game that was going to be taking place. Now, once we do get to the Sabak match, this for me was absolutely awesome. Now, I love Sabak as it is. In the base game, I've probably got about 70 hours played through both my playthroughs, and I genuinely believe that maybe 10 of those hours were just playing Sabak. I absolutely love this game. Yeah, and if anyone at Ubisoft is listening, I would love it if they actually turned this into like a mobile game so that I could just pull it up on my phone and play it. It's so much fun. And anyway, I was immediately hooked in this match. It was very, very high stakes, and it just felt a lot more intense. There's also an extra 2 people than normal. Every other Sabak match you play throughout the entire game is just 4 players, but this was 6. And there's even like a commentator droid that's pretty much standing there, and even droids that are watching you to make sure you don't cheat. You can still cheat, but it was a lot harder to. You can see there's like red lights on you when they're looking at you, and it definitely made it more intense, because honestly, every Sabak game that I play now, after I've gotten all the good shift tokens and all those sorts of things, all the good cheats, I pretty much can't lose at Sabak anymore. And so it kind of made me a bit nervous, like, oh shit, I can't do all these cheats. How am I actually going to win this match? Because we're playing against the likes of Lando and obviously a bunch of other high rollers. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. And this for me was probably the single best part about the entire DLC. But again, that's coming from someone who absolutely loves Sabak. I know if you don't like the game, then this part was probably a little bit boring and you just wanted to kind of get through it. Something else that I loved too was that they pretty much removed the actual HUD from Sabak and they built it all into the table. So at certain points, I was kind of wondering, how many chips do I actually have? I don't know how much I'm allowed to spend right now, but it's all built into the table. And once I realized that, I was kind of blown away. Even the actual scoreboard is built into like the hologram within the table and everything. And yeah, it just felt really immersive compared to the other Sabak tables, which to be fair, they already did feel immersive, but this one just definitely took it to a whole other level. My only real complaint here, and again, this is coming from someone who loves Sabak, I would have loved if there was actually a bit more Sabak involved, because at the end of the day, this game kind of did feel a bit scripted. It didn't actually get resolved. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail there just to avoid spoilers, but I would have loved if there was genuine full Sabak matches. Maybe, for example, instead of some of the whodunit section there on the Marina, it would have been cool to actually like play your way into this tournament, so you have to win other matches. Maybe you've got 3 games before this one that you have to go and win in order to kind of earn your spot into the actual final tournament. So that was really my only complaint, just because again, the game almost felt a bit scripted, but again, it was actually a whole lot of fun and was probably one of the more enjoyable Zabak matches I've ever played. So can't really knock it too much. I think I just would have loved a little bit more. Now, again, to avoid spoilers, I won't say what happens at the Zabak match, but all I can say is it kind of leads to a bunch of action in the final hour or so. And that last hour was also pretty fun. It wasn't anything crazy. It did just feel pretty similar to the rest of the game, really. But I will say it was really cool to get into some new areas within Miragana. There's kind of like a new section almost in the underground of Miragana. So that was really cool to see a new little section, and even just Toshara in general, just kind of going out there again on the speeder. We had a few items we needed to collect and stuff. It was honestly just good fun being back on Toshara, and it made me actually kind of miss playing this game. Now, this is where we get to probably my only genuine criticism of the DLC, and this is essentially the ending of it. I felt like the ending to the DLC was very abrupt. It kind of felt like it just came out of nowhere, and I actually wasn't sure if the DLC was finished yet or if I was meant to wait for some more comms from Lando or something. It obviously pops up with something on your screen giving you kind of a summary of the DLC, so I knew like, okay, it's probably finished, but it was still so abrupt that I kind of thought, okay, was that just like part of the DLC and now we're on to like chapter 2 or something? I wasn't too sure, but no, it turns out that is just the ending of the DLC. So that's really my only genuine criticism. Obviously, the rest of it isn't perfect either. There's other stuff I would love to see improved, but this is really the only thing that I think was genuinely a bit confusing or concerning. Just the way that the story kind of ended. It didn't really feel resolved, and the only thing I can give them some leeway there is that we don't know if that's to do with the next DLC. It's sort of hard to explain what I mean without going into spoilers, but there is every chance that maybe the rest of this story kind of gets told in that second DLC as well, but I kind of doubt it. It does feel like they're going to be different stories, and so yeah, it just doesn't really feel like we got a proper resolution to this story. Not only the actual key plot point, but also just the stuff with Thornton. It didn't feel like there was a resolution there either. He was essentially the big bad in this DLC, and yet at the end of the story, we didn't really hear from him at all, even though in a real situation, he would definitely be either hunting us down or getting in contact with us or something. So yeah, I think that's really my only genuine complaint, is it just felt a little bit short, and the ending just kind of happened, and then you're a bit like, oh, what the hell? I didn't actually know we were that close to finishing. And I think a lot of people are probably going to feel the same, unfortunately. Overall, I do think that the DLC was a very solid addition to Kay's story. I think it is worth playing. If you enjoyed the base game, you will enjoy this, in my opinion. Again, unless you just don't like Sabak and maybe the stuff with the mystery that you've got to unsolve on the Marina. If you're not interested in like following clues and figuring stuff out, then yeah, maybe you won't like the DLC, but I think for most people who enjoyed the game, this is a good addition to the story. But again, I do feel like it was just a bit on the shorter side. For anyone wondering, it was about 2.5 hours long, which is pretty damn short. Now, for me personally, I actually don't hate that, just because I'm so busy at the moment. I've got so many other games that I'm covering on the other channels and stuff. So for me personally, I'm actually not mad about it being pretty short. It was kind of short and sweet, and I enjoyed that, but that's just me. And I know a lot of other people would have wanted more. This is a paid DLC, so I think 2.5 to maybe 3 hours at most is probably not the best for a paid DLC. If it was free, I think that would be fine. But the fact that people do need to pay for this, it's really not long enough to probably justify that unless you really enjoy the game. If you're one of those people who just thought the game was like all right, then I'll be honest, I'm not sure the DLC is actually worth getting unless it comes down in price or something like that. All of that being said, I always kind of thought this was going to be the short DLC. I think that the Hondo one was always going to be the main DLC just because it's the last one. And obviously Lando's in the base game, whereas Hondo is not in the base game. So I feel like they're going to put a bit more effort into the Hondo one. And I've pretty much thought that since before launch. So hopefully that is the case. I will be really disappointed if that one is also only the same length. I feel like we kind of deserve for that one to be more like a 5 to 7 hour edition with like an entire new planet or something like that. If we don't get that, if it's like 2 hours again and there's no new planets, I will genuinely be disappointed in that one. Whereas for this one, I wasn't expecting it to be anything crazy. And so I think that's why my expectations were kind of set in the right place, and therefore I'm not, feeling too negative about it. But again, for the Hondo one, I probably will be a little bit disappointed if it's similar in length to this one. Overall though, I think I would probably give this DLC about a 7 out of 10. I personally enjoyed it. I could see it maybe being more like a 6 for a lot of people, just due to the fact that it was obviously very short. And then also, again, if you don't like Sabak and you don't like the sort of mystery side of it, and you just wanted some action, then I could honestly see it being like a 5 out of 10 for some people. But yeah, for me, big Sabak fan, very much a fan of the short DLC, just for the sake of literally right now, I'm just too busy to play anything longer than that. And so I think personally, I'm happy to give it about a 7 out of 10, but I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts as well down in the comment section. So be sure to give your own score. Let me know what you agree or disagree with. I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the force be with you always.